The subject of this video may seem rather trivial at the moment, because there are more important things. I have nothing to add to that, though, and you'll see why I'm making this video soon enough. I also should have made this video earlier, but I screwed it up the first time. The story begins with a video by Andy and Chris Warski. The Warskis made a video dealing with the kneeling NFL players, and below that video was a comment by the one and only Theryn Meyer. Here's what she had to say.
But if I were to call anybody an asshole in this situation, it would have to be Trump. Despite the foolishness of the NFL players and their supporters, they seem to have a better grasp of what America is all about than the president himself. See, America and its values are built upon the sanctity of the individual and the individual's right to express him or herself, especially the individual's right to dissent from the state without persecution. In America, the individual is valued above and beyond the state, and that's why it's such a great place. But if Trump had his way, these players would be fired for protesting the president and the state of America. That's some fashy bullshit.
Theryn's most recent video was basically an expansion of the comment she left under the Warski video. In her video, she said this.
Some people push back on the idea that Trump's exhibiting fashy tendencies by saying that if every white player in the NFL started wearing swastikas during interviews, you would probably see them fired for it, and rightfully so.
Hey, that's me she's talking about. Now, she might have said some people, but I'm happy all the same because I really like Theryn Meyer most of the time. And I'm not going to argue with her at all. I just wanted to clarify my comment because she misunderstood my point.
Some people push back on the idea that Trump's exhibiting fashy tendencies by saying that if every white player in the NFL started wearing swastikas during interviews, you would probably see them fired for it, and rightfully so.
I wasn't pushing back on the idea that Trump is exhibiting fashy tendencies. My comment didn't mention Trump at all. I know Theryn's did, but bear in mind that the larger context was the Warski video. The subject at hand was the kneeling players themselves, not the president. And at this point, I'm actually going to do something as ridiculous as analyze a YouTube comment. The first part of Theryn's second sentence reads, "Despite the idiocy of the take-a-knee NFL players and their supporters." Well, okay, I'm on the same page as Theryn here, and I'm highlighting that first part to make certain my viewers don't get the wrong impression of Theryn's stance. She goes on to say of the take-a-knee movement, they seem to have a better grasp of what America is all about than the president himself. Like I said, I don't share her concern about the president, but I don't think she was being unreasonable there. And that wasn't the part that I was responding to. This is the part that bothered me. Fired for protesting the state of America? That's some fashy bullshit. Well, that depends. If an NFL team owner were to fire a player because the president said he should, then you'd be right. If a player were fired for protesting anywhere other than the field, then you could be right. But if a player were to be fired for a controversial protest on the field, then it's a different thing. A team owner who wants to preserve his team's reputation, or who even just wants to preserve his profits, is not doing it for fashy reasons, even if you still disagree with the firing. Go back and read my reply. My reply had them wearing swastikas during an interview, not on the field. Now, the reason that's significant is that in my example, unlike in the actual kneeling controversy, I had the players acting somewhere other than on the field, and I still would take no issue to them being fired for it. But even so, it doesn't matter if wearing a swastika is comparable to protesting the Trump administration.
See, America and its values are built upon the sanctity of the individual and the individual's right to express him or herself, especially the individual's right to dissent from the state without persecution. In America, the individual is valued above and beyond the state, and that's why it's such a great place.
The freedom of the individual that you speak of so fondly in your video, Theryn, applies every bit as much to a swastika-wearing scumbag as it does to a kneeling NFL player. And that is vital to maintaining freedom of speech. I was using an extreme example to make a point. I was not actually trying to compare my hypothetical swastika-wearing scumbag to a kneeling NFL player. I know they're not the same thing. My point was that it can be legitimate for someone to be fired for an act of self-expression. There's also a difference between compelled speech and prohibited speech. The state compelling someone to do something, like standing for the national anthem, is not the same as prohibiting someone from doing something like wear a swastika at an NFL game. Well, that sounds good, but you're actually kind of making my point for me here, because the state wouldn't be compelling anyone to do anything. The NFL would.
I understand that the NFL is a private company that can enforce a code of conduct for its players.
Now, there is a difference between prohibited speech and compelled speech, that's true. However, it is not true that all compelled speech is authoritarian. And Theryn's misinterpretation actually helps me out here, because even though I didn't say they might be wearing swastikas on the field, she's suggested they should be prohibited from doing so. But the truth of that is that a player can't wear just whatever they want on the field. They are compelled to wear a particular uniform, a very particular uniform in the case of the NFL. And what a person wears ordinarily does fall under the realm of free expression. But there are many kinds of businesses that compel their employees to wear a certain uniform, whether they want to or not. And that is perfectly acceptable, even in a free society. Is that relevant, though? Well, it actually could be, because not too long ago there were certain players and teams who wanted to wear special cleats that commemorated the 9/11 tragedy. And the NFL said they couldn't because it wasn't part of the acceptable uniform. So you can't just say compelled speech and automatically win the argument. Now, I don't think that's what Theryn's trying to do, but I still wanted to make the point. Oh, and for the sake of any of my viewers who might not have seen it, here's the Warski's opinion of Trump's comments.
And then Trump bashed this. I don't agree because Trump was like, they should fire them. No, they can do whatever they want.
Also, the Warskis had this to say.
If you want to take a knee, fine. Except I'm going to judge you.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Just for the record.
And I understand that Trump's statements were just his opinion.
Now, Trump, ironically, has created a situation in which these players can't be fired without making it seem as though the owners are capitulating to the president. So Trump really should have just kept his mouth shut instead of putting his unhealthy eccentricities on display again. Speaking of rich people with unhealthy eccentricities, though, these NFL players are a bunch of self-important, overpaid athletes pissing all over their fans.
Personally, I don't see why Trump and his supporters are so outraged by the NFL players.
First off, it's not just Trump and his supporters who are outraged by this, so don't connect the two. I didn't vote for Trump, and I know people who truly despise Trump who still are offended by this protest. Why are people that offended, though? Well, if I were in a foreign country, and their national anthem started playing and everyone got to their feet and was reverently silent, then I would join in. I would get to my feet. Not my flag, not my anthem. Doesn't make a difference. Out of respect for everyone around me, that's what I would do. If I were in a church, say if I were invited to a wedding, and during the ceremony people were asked to rise, then I would get to my feet. I would not take part in any prayer, because I am not religious. But even not being religious, I still would get to my feet. To do otherwise would be horribly disrespectful. Most people will follow that example. To sit or kneel during the national anthem is not just an insult to the flag. It is an insult to everyone who believes in it. Now, some supporters of this protest will tell me how noble and important and urgent it is.
Jeez. I just hope we're in time to save the world.
They don't have to attach the flag to their protest. If I thought that were the only way they could protest, or even the best way for them to protest, then it might be different. But their protest is driving fans away because the fans feel disrespected. They could have just as easily performed any gesture, kneeling or otherwise, at any other time on that field. And in the age of social media, they could have even made it clear that out of respect for their fans, they won't do it during the anthem, but they still want their protest to be recognized. And I've had some people suggest that, they had to do something drastic to get attention. Well, I'm not sure that's right, but even if I thought so, mission accomplished. At this point, they can adapt to show respect for their fans. Because they haven't, it tells me what they really think of the people watching. And an actor or musician or author or athlete who does not respect his own fans is someone I have no respect for.